So the next thing we're going to ask is, how did Josephine Baker feel about performing in blackface? Okay, Josephine Baker is like anything for a check. She didn't care. She's like, I'm going to get my money. This is what they want. This is what they like. I'm going to poke fun at myself, and I'm going to go out here and entertain these people. It makes a lot of money to do this sort of work. At the same time, it is generating. It generated for her a lot of attention. It drummed up a lot of criticism. I am saying it being very polarizing at the time for more conscious African Americans, but she knew that her audience was white people, and most African Americans would not be able to typically afford to see her perform. So she's like, I'm going to get out here, I'm going to entertain these people, and I'm gonna laugh along with them. Um, Something that's very apparent to me about Josephine Baker is that she didn't she felt very deeply, and she thought on a scholarly level, but she never allowed her intellectual conclusions to influence the ways in which she went about entertaining around this time. So she knew that blackface was something that was, visually horrific, um, to display to a white audience. But at the end of the day, she's like, I've got to get paid. And she said to herself that and I'm saying where she's weighing out her options. I can get paid to dance in blackface, or I can get paid to have sex. Which one would I rather do? And this one makes me more money, and I have to eat. And it was all about survival for her. It was all about just the money, and she desensitized herself to the social and visual implications of performing in blackface, so that she could have a clear mind and just get out there and perform for the masses, because that's what it was about for her. Okay, so the next few questions that I have are, how does she know France was where she needed to be to become world famous? And was she well received in the US, or did the white media institutions not understand her? Josephine Baker had always had dreams of traveling, overseas especially, and I'm seeing it as it was too much criticism from U.S. media outlets, them not really understanding and appreciating her artistry, and she felt that grow she couldn't grow in the American art industry. She felt that it was much too conservative, and she saw herself as a French woman. She saw herself as someone that could be appreciated in a culture that could produce the supermodels, and a culture that could produce high art. Um, and I see it as she was offered it. She was approached by someone, and they made an offer to her to perform once or twice in France, and she said, "Hey, this is definitely why wouldn't I want to do that?" To her, it was again all about the money, but what she didn't know was that she would want to live forever in France, and that she would have this world recognition through by placing herself in France. So with the Nine of Cups here, this is speaking specifically about her wishes being fulfilled here. But it wasn't a wish that was being fulfilled in terms of going to France, but it was a wish to be fulfilled in terms of doing art, entertaining people, and doing it for people that could appreciate the intellectual value of what she had to offer, and also the sonic and lyrical value of her voice, and the songs that she would create and produce herself. The card for the Hangman is mainly talking about her feeling like she's, if I'm leaving the US, am I, letting them win? Is this a good thing for me to do? Is this the best thing for me to do? Am I losing the battle, and am I losing the war here? But she had to let that go and say that, her ego, she had to, she didn't know this, but her ego was getting in the way of her having as much success as she wanted to in the US. So she would have had to tone down her performances in terms of their vulgarity. But she didn't want to do that, and she said that, hey, it's not raining in Southern California, but it's pouring in the Bay. And so she left the dry US and she went to wet France, and that's where her blessings were raining down for her. Was Josephine Baker well received in the U.S., or did white media institutions not understand her? Josephine Baker, she had a complicated relationship with U.S. media outlets. The U.S. media saw her as a troublemaker, but at the same time, they wanted to take credit for her international success. Josephine Baker wanted to lash out at the United States media outlets, and she wanted to tear them down, when she could, but she never allowed herself to, because she said to herself, I'm not going to get involved in those types of spats and warfare, those types of spats and verbal warfare with the media, because the U.S. had always been unjust to her, is what she felt. She felt like she had always had a how do I say this? She felt that from since she was born in the United States, she was dealt a bad hand, and that the United States as a country was trying to suppress her talent, and also to keep her economically disenfranchised. With her coming up as a page of Spears, she had a plan to maintain some sort of relationship with the United States, but it was a very shallow relationship that she wanted to maintain. But the U.S. was keeping a shallow relationship with her, so it's kind of like, she would mention to people, "Hey, I'm from the United States," and the United States would say, "Hey, Josephine Baker's from the United States," but that was it. The media, as far as the media understanding her, they didn't. They said that they appreciated her art and her artistry, but in truth, they didn't really venerate her as they should have. I'm seeing that she celebrated a lot of her success in France, but she felt that when she would come to the United States, that she was working with a cup that was half empty. And she always felt like when she was going to the U.S. that they were, essentially diminishing her talent, diminishing her artistic genius. And it was like, these people would pay for it, but it was almost as though they were just paying to criticize her. And she knew that these people were sexually and socially repressed. So they were only judging her. They were only projecting onto her the things that they felt and feared about themselves. So it led to this complicated relationship where she could never genuinely and wholly appreciate her time in the United States, or even the idea that the United States wanted to claim her, because she didn't want to really claim them. Okay, so we're going to do a fresh shuffle, and, we're going to ask the next few questions, which are, what were her experiences like being a French military spy in World War II? And was Coretta Scott King genuinely interested in Josephine Baker leading the civil rights movement? Okay, so one thing that I can tell you from her experiences being a spy is that she enjoyed the covert operations and launching the plans that she did. She was someone that she was like, I get to perform and I get to gossip with these people and have them tell me everything. And sometimes she did have sex with people, and very important people, so that she could get the gossip and the tea. She liked to play aloof. She liked to play a dumb bimbo, and she would write down everything that she could. And I'm saying that she would, and these are things that I think I know too. That she would write things down, put it in her panties, put it in her bra, put it in her put it in the pantyhose, leave it in her heels, and people didn't suspect her of being a spy. She was great at what she did, and she was paid handsomely for the work that she did as well. She's like, hey, I'm gonna get this money, and I'm gonna have some to give to my friends that are that are not as wealthy. And I'm saying that she had a good heart in terms of being a Samaritan to the people that she was close to. But what she didn't know was how dangerous the work that she was doing was. And upon her first mission, it was scary for her, but when she succeeded at it, she's like, hey, I can do this again. No one suspected me of anything. They actually really like me. People confided a lot of stuff in me. And she was paid handsomely. So she's like, it's two paychecks. I get paid to perform for the enemy, and I get paid by my allies for the information that I go and give them, and I can have sex as well. It's not like she didn't want to have sex with powerful men, and sometimes those powerful men would give her a third check. So for her, she was like, hey, I'm balling. Okay, so I get the Four of Cups, which is speaking specifically about her at some points feeling like she needed to take a break, or that she needed to stop because of the mental exhaustion that she would have to go through. Not only would she have to perform, but she would have to also remember every single thing that was told to her. At the same time, a lot of these things she had to remember these things while she was intoxicated, because it was to get drunk would help to make more genuine her ruse of being just a performer. She was scared that she was getting set up as well. And she hated to she one part of what she hated about what she was doing was that she started to build genuine friendships with people that she was collecting intel on, and she didn't want these people to feel as though that she didn't like them. And the truth was even though these people were her, were her country were her country's enemies, she said to herself, I think that these people could also be good people and that we could get along, but at the end of the day, I've got to get my money. And she's like, she dealt with the reality of things, and she had to remain logical rather than emotional. Um, There were some points where she didn't get paid what she had been promised, by her by France's enemies. They would, either, give her a really lavish dinner but not pay her the money that she was supposed to be paid. And she would go and complain about that, and say, hey, I can continue doing this work for you guys if you can make up for what the enemy didn't give me. So she would go to her allies. Her allies would toss her more money, and she would come up with more ideas and more intel. The thing is Josephine Baker was a bargainer. So she's telling these people, if you give me more money, I can get more intel. If you make this mission more attractive with the money, I will do better at it because I'm more motivated to seduce. And in essence, it was almost like a form of very sophisticated and high class prostitution, because she was expected to sleep with um the French the French's enemies generals, and she was also expected to maintain genuine relationships with these people and also have them thinking that she had a sincere affection for them. Okay, now I'm going to ask, was Coretta Scott King genuinely interested in Josephine Baker leading the civil rights movement? Coretta Scott King felt like she felt like there was no one better to do it but Josephine Baker, and Coretta Scott King felt like God was telling her that Josephine Baker was the person to help them. Coretta Scott King is coming up as a high priestess, so I'm saying that Coretta was someone that was quite intuitive, and she spent a lot of time at home. Um, in after Martin Luther King's death, I'm saying that she spent a lot of time at home, and she was impressed with Josephine Baker's. She was impressed with Josephine Baker's career history, and she was in complete awe of her oratory skills and her intellect. So it was pretty genuine, but at the same time, Coretta Scott King is thinking strategically about Josephine Baker doing this work because no, this is after Martin Luther King's death. That's what I'm hearing. This is after his death. But yeah, Coretta Scott King felt like Josephine Baker could how do I say this? She felt that Josephine Baker could legally could provide a great sort of legal and legitimate representation to the civil rights movement. And she also felt that Josephine Baker was quite brave because she's like, this woman goes out and she performs naked and look at what she sings and does. And I feel that, she's so used to being judged by society that she's not going to, she's going to be, continue a radical. She's going to continue and grow the radical messages that Martin Luther King was about to start promoting. And she felt like Josephine Baker could help to advance, issues with African Americans. It's how I'm stumbling through this because Coretta Scott King asking Josephine Baker to do this was not the most responsible the most responsible request, if only because Josephine Baker felt that the United States' race relations, she's like, you can't really change them. I feel like they're being, she's like, I feel like Josephine Baker felt very much like the government controlled everything. She's like, even with the civil rights movement, you all can choose to resist the U.S. government, but the U.S. government still controls everything. And she's like, even you all's movements. And Josephine Baker was just disenchanted by the U.S. And she also felt like Coretta Scott King's request for her to lead the civil rights movement was impulsive and not really well thought out, and kind of a shallow reason to ask her to do it. But Josephine Baker seriously considered it for a moment and denied and said no, because she felt like it was easier it would be more beneficial for her to use her time to help advance help her advance issues, help to advance France rather than to advance things in the U.S., because she didn't really spend that much time in the U.S. and she still had a very a bittersweet experience of the U.S., and more bitter than it was sweet. And I'm speaking about Josephine Baker. Okay. All that being said, thank you for tuning into the reading produced by Black Spectrum Network. Click the subscribe button and the bell button to get the latest updates on this channel. You can purchase a private psychic reading by going to www.blackspectrumnetwork.com. If you want spiritual guidance to learn how to work with your ancestors, or you're interested in deepening your spiritual experiences, subscribe to our Patreon. You can get these and other videos at least 1 week ahead of their YouTube release date. That's patreon.com/Black Spectrum Network. Before I go, I'll leave you with these words of wisdom from the rapper Dreezy. gave mercy to these hoes, what would Jesus do? I'm your reader, Nick Zoe, and the truth is always collaborative.
So fuel my fire, take me higher, I'll be your liar too. Cause when we're here, there's nothing better than the skyline